I hope in this 2022 that we're at the point where if there's a little girl out there who wants to play sport, there's an opportunity, and we don't have to worry about her having that opportunity.
We don't want what Julie did to turn this into a freak show.
Some people, I'm sure, had funny feelings about it. I know the men did. I didn't really care.
It's not, about skin color and, all these other socioeconomic differences. You want your team to win.
I'm Celine Yeager.
I'm Sara Gross.
This is 9, Voices for Title IX, powered by Inside Tracker.
A podcast that tells the stories behind the law that changed everything.
This is 9.
9. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Celine.
So this week is very exciting because you're doing the interview. Again, this is your second one. And for those who do not know, Sara Gross is an Ironman champion and founder and chief of all things Feisty Media here. But I felt like this was a really perfect pairing this week because our guest, who we'll get into in a moment, really emphasizes how important sport is, not for sport itself, but because of everything else in life, your opportunities, you're learning how to work with a team, all those life lessons and opportunities you get for the rest of your life, which is something I've heard you say a million times, and I feel like is the core of your being. So I think you guys were really well paired.
I did vibe with Janet quite a lot. Yeah, I met her. So like Janet.
So it is Janet.
Janet Cohn.
Yep.
Da, da. Guest reveal is our guest, and she's the athletic director of both men's and women's sports at the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and she's been in that role for 18 years, which is quite incredible for a female athletic director. And I met Janet when I was in Asheville. We were looking for an event at a venue for an event in Asheville, and she showed us all around her, I got to see the whole all the athletic facilities and everything at Asheville. So that was pretty fun. And right away, sorry, you were just saying that I was vibing with her. Like right away, I was like, oh, I love this woman. Like she, at the time, I think she is actually 70 now. She says in the show, but she or she might've said she's almost 70, but she right away, I was like, wow, this is a highly, highly competent person, and has seen the way that Title IX plays out kind of in every aspect, from the fact that she was a university athlete in the 70s, to being a coach where she had to deal with an unequal pay, or even the fact that men were taking the jobs that had been women's jobs. So we talked about that. So every level of all the things we would talk about in this series is kind of discussed with Janet here. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I thought she was another one that really epitomized what this whole 9 Voices for Title IX is expressing. And, the two of you together definitely vibed. It just some interesting stuff that stood out for me was because there were some things I'm we're still talking about that, the whole girl dad thing really stuck out for me, because she was talking about how there were not that many opportunities, and it bugged her. She wants to play little league baseball, or she wanted to be the high school quarterback of the football team or whatever, but just kept hearing, well, no, there's no, girls don't do that. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that there was some more opportunities for her, field hockey or whatever in high school, was because the high school football coach at the time was a quote unquote girl dad, he hadn't boys, he had girls. So he wanted to make sure that they could play some sports, so they could play basketball. And I have a love-hate thing with that, because we still hear it. We still hear oh, well, they'll get opportunities now because they're girl dads. And I'm like, why? Why do we need so if they had sons, things would just still be the same. That right. It always rubs me a little not well.
Yeah, it's a strange way of kind of patting the back of a supportive man, of saying the reason he's being supportive is because he has girls, right? It's if you wouldn't have noticed that there's gender inequity in sport until you had a daughter, you're actually sort of behind the mark, you know, like catch up, people.
Yeah, I mean, so I appreciate the allyship, but oh boy, you know,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh boy. And I love that she mentions Joan Crone,
Mhm.
who, you know, we've had on a previous episode, because it's like really rad to see all these same generation of trailblazers sort of working together to get it done. And she even talks about that, like, you know, they
Yeah.
meet each other and they'll be like, let's get stuff done. And I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah, I did too. And like Janet got shit done, you know,
Yeah.
like she added women's sports, like she added golf and swimming to the NCAA at
Yep.
at Asheville. And
Yeah.
she's also like the first woman to be added to the NCAA Division I men's basketball committee too, which is very cool. I also liked the fact, like when she sort of said that she was sometimes, or she felt her and her colleagues, like you talked about, like that kind of cabal of women working together to become athletic directors in the generation, that the first generation of that existing, afraid to ask for too much or be perceived as a troublemaker because you might not get that opportunity. And I think that that's something that hasn't come up in this series yet, but I think is very true in change making environments, that first generation has to like, and even the second generation just changes how they have to play the game kind of to get to where, like, you know, how far to push and when to stop, you know?
Totally. And I think Joan referred to that in her own way when she was talking about having to use humor. You know, I mean, I remember her talking specifically about like stuff that wouldn't sit well and people that, you know, she didn't necessarily agree with or weren't necessarily on the same page, but these are the folks you need to work with and you need to play this game in a certain way. And it's interesting that like that we're talking like this because those are all sports skills and analogies, right? Like you're coming in, you know, as kind of an underdog, you know, like in some ways, you know, you're outpowered, you know, and you have to figure out how to leverage what you do. You know, it all comes from sport. And that's what, you know, and they're making their own point in many ways and also living their own points. It was really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And back to the first point that you made too, like Janet's living her own point about how sport teaches leadership and that can affect like someone's everything from mental health to their opportunities in life, right? So we certainly see how Janet has grown and become a leader throughout her life in this interview.
Totally. So I think we let people just listen in. It was a really good one.
Cool. After a word from our sponsors.
Raise your hand if you believe we need more women and more overall diversity at our triathlons. Now keep that hand up if you want to be part of the solution. The team at Lifetime, the nation's premier healthy way of life brand, is right there with you. Their main focus? The iconic Verizon New York City Triathlon, coming up on July 24th. For this year's New York City Tri, Lifetime replaced their registration lottery, added a duathlon distance, and implemented a rookie refund program, all to get more racers, like you, of every age, skill level, and background to take on the concrete jungle. They have women, but not enough. They have non-binary participants, but they need more. They have athletes from 39 states and 17 countries, but they want to cover every corner of the globe. Let's write a better future for endurance sports together. Visit nyctri.com today to reserve your spot to race the greatest city in the world. That's nyctri.com.
Female hair loss is a topic few of us want to talk about, but it impacts nearly 30 million women, so we should. And that's why we appreciate that Bonafide's healthy hair and scalp product, Sylvessa, is one of our show partners. With Sylvessa, Bonafide designed the first comprehensive system designed to restore and protect hair and skin affected by estrogen decline from the inside and out. It consists of a 3-part system containing a daily capsule, hair serum, and skin serum to be combined for healthier looking skin and hair. During a 12-week clinical study, Bonafide found that 92% of women saw improvement in hair volume, 82% saw improvement in hair thickness, and 67% saw improvement in scalp coverage. Over 8,300 uncompensated doctors in the U.S. recommend Bonafide's products. All of their products are prescription and hormone free. And for listeners today, we want to give you 20% off your first purchase of Sylvessa and or any of Bonafide's products when you subscribe to any product. Just go to hellobonafide.com/Title9 and use the promo code Title9. That's hellobonafide, BONAFIDE.com/Title9 and the code Title9, all caps, TITLE and the number 9 for 20% off at checkout. For the best prices and free shipping, go directly to the hellobonafide.com/Title9 website. That is their best offer anywhere, so check it out and use the promo code Title9 today.
Janet, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here in the studio with you. We met in Asheville.
Absolutely.
Time is a weird thing, so I don't even know how long ago that was, but I was definitely delighted to meet you. And I knew from that first encounter that you were someone for whom gender equity in sport had been so important for a long time. How did you first, what was kind of your first, what did you say, like encounter with like the idea that sport might not be equal for men and women?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think one of the things, I'm from a very large family, so I was between two brothers, and obviously to see the opportunities they had when I was sort of a little girl, and I was wondering why couldn't I play Little League baseball, or, I wanted to be the quarterback on the football team, but somebody would say, but girls don't do that. And, and then when I got into elementary school and middle school and on into high school, it was pretty clear that the boys had many more opportunities and than some of the girls did. So, I think it was one of those things you kind of figure out pretty quickly, like, why can't we do that? And how come they get to do that? But I was very fortunate in this way. Our high school football coach, who was also the athletic director, he had daughters. He did not have sons. So we were fortunate even, pre-Title IX, that we had a few more opportunities, just the fact that he had daughters and his daughters wanted to play basketball. So in some ways, I had a little bit of an advantage, but it was pretty obvious there was not as many opportunities for the other sports.
Yeah. And how did you react to that as a child? How did you feel about it?
Well, if you know anything about my personality, I'm like, even as an adult, I'm like the third grader that keeps raising their hand saying, well, how come? Why can't we? I just don't understand. Explain that to me. So, I was always questioning. And very early on, I can remember, not only in sports, I was sort of like, someone would say, well, why don't, and all occupations are very important, trust me. And I have a great deal of respect for nurses and, administrative assistants. But, people were saying, well, you're going to go, why don't you be a nurse? And I'm thinking, why can't I be a doctor? And so, of course, remember, I'm much older than you are. So it was very unusual that women were having those careers as lawyers or doctors, or even, coaches, or certainly athletic directors were, hardly non-existent opportunities for women. But I'm like the kid in third grade. Why not? Why not? Why not?
Right. And did you believe that you could? Like, was there part of you that, go ahead.
I believe early on that I could. And I don't know why, why that is, because obviously I love my parents. I love my mother to death, but she didn't have those opportunities, certainly. And it was more like, well, you can't do that. Girls don't do those things. And I'm like, but this girl's going to do those things, And so it was one of those, in some ways, I probably sort of to them as my mother's like, where did this child come from? Because I always felt like, why not? I'll try. And, and then the other thing that happened to me, to tell you the truth, I was very fortunate in middle school and high school. My coaches, it was a young husband and wife team that moved to, I grew up in Somerville, South Carolina, Mike and Lynn Malden, and they just became role models for me. And, and really kind of said, girls can play sports. What do you want to play? Tennis? You want to play golf? And, really introduced me to those kinds of things. Like, not only can you, but, just opened a whole new world. And, I, like any, athlete, you kind of idolize your coaches, particularly if you have really good ones that are great role models. And so that they opened a whole door, which also led to how I got to Furman University to as my undergraduate, to get my undergraduate degree was because of them.
Wow. What was your undergraduate degree in?
Yeah, so I ended up, it was really a kind of a strange story, but my coaches said to me, I applied to Duke and Clemson, and really I was thinking I was going to go pre-med. And they, one Sunday afternoon, I think I was over in their house, and they said, why have you ever thought about Furman? I'm going, Furman University, and where is that? And I'm from South Carolina. I said, in Greenville. So I remember I went home and I told my mom, I said, can we go up, take a drive up to Greenville? I want to look at Furman before I decide where I'm going to school. And so we went up on a weekend and just kind of drove up to Greenville. And as soon as I drove into the gates, I went, this is where I want to go to school. I hadn't even applied or anything. So I immediately applied and thought, I have to go to school here. And this is going to kind of give the story of how I got into coaching and athletic administration. So I ended up, after going up there, coach mentioned it, I would go up there. This is the only place I wanted to go to school now is Furman University. And it really changed my life, because at Furman is where I started in pre-med, but I met Dr. Ruth Reed, who really is probably the first female who said, you can do anything you want to do. You can go to med school, but you have this passion about sports and teaching. And have you ever thought about perhaps going in? And I'm like, what kind of careers am I going to have in that? So she was really sort of pre-Title IX. And as Title IX was happening at, during that time, really was that role model that encouraged me to do that. So I called home and said, guess what? I'm not going to be a doctor. My mother said, well, now you're going to be a nurse, right? I'm like, no, I'm going to go major in what at the time was health and physical education, which is now exercise science at Furman. And I'm going to teach and coach. And it really changed my life, to tell you the truth. It was the best decision I've ever made. And but little did I know, I quickly realized there were going to be many challenges for women in sports, all the way to the salaries and the opportunities and, what you can and cannot do for your team and with your team. So, but I would never change what I'm doing. I think it's been a great career and great opportunities.
Yeah, you've mentioned role models a few times, right? And it feels like, you said about the football coach whose daughters played basketball, and then this couple who helped encourage you to go to university, and then Dr. Ruth, I forget what her last
Dr. Ruth
name.
Reed.
Yeah, amazing. Now, in what way did those role models help you? Like, were they themselves? Was it what they were doing, or the way that they encouraged you, or kind of both?
I really believe it was both. Lot of what they said to me, I think everybody wants somebody to believe in them, or somebody to encourage them, say, yes, you can. And I actually, throughout my life, I can tell you others that have told me, yes, you can be an athletic director, or yes, you can be a Division I coach. For whatever reasons, they come into your lives, and they're the people that just kind of help lift you up and encourage you. And so one of the things I've learned from all of my role models, and now, I guess the buzzword is mentors, who are your mentors? I've made a commitment. If they help me, now I'm going to help somebody else. So, I've tried to take that into my career, that when someone's I try never to be too busy to take a phone call or answer an email with someone who says, hey, you got 30 minutes for me to talk to you about a career in athletics, or how did I get started, or what can I do? And so, I think it's kind of a twofold thing. They encourage me, they help me see opportunities, held me accountable, because remember, you still have to do the work yourself, but yet the part that I probably enjoyed the most is they've taught me to give back, to open doors for other, not just women, for if you got an opportunity to help people in their careers, why not help them?
Right. Like if a media company emails you and asks you to be on a podcast about Title IX.
I definitely would do it. See, I remember meeting you too, and I felt like then there was something, you had excitement and enthusiasm. I'm always attracted to people that have this can-do attitude, or life is good, and let's stay in touch. So, I try to help as much as I can. And that part, especially when you get to the point where I am in my career, probably some of the most rewarding things you do now is helping others. I've had, and I'm certainly not retiring or walking away from athletics anytime soon, but it's such a rewarding to help someone who is starting their career get an opportunity or connect them with someone else that can help them. And I really believe, back to Title IX, we have so many more opportunities now to help women find those careers. And it's not just as coaches or administrators, it's in media. I've had fun. Debbie Antonelli's become a close friend, and seeing her career in media, and Leslie Visser, who was a trailblazer with CBS, has come to our campus, because we do this event called Our Turn to Play, which is really to celebrate Title IX and help our present student athletes kind of realize that, we're not where we are. And there's been many, many people who have been trailblazers, but we still have, room to go. We still have to help many others get opportunities.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go. I want to go to the early 1970s. Because I want to get a sense, I was born in 1976, right? So I didn't know what was going on in the zeitgeist until at least like the mid 80s. But like around that time, where were you in your athletic progression? And then also what was kind of in the air? Like, do you remember talk about Title IX?
Honestly, I was in college, so there you go. You're more, my youngest sister is your age. So I was in college when my youngest sister was born, same parents. And it was still, we were getting some opportunities, but there certainly was not the same opportunities as they are now. And I think that, that was the beginning part of seeing some real trailblazers who were speaking up more for women, and different universities stepping up saying, we got to do things differently. And remember, we were coming out of what I call the AIAW, pre-women sports in NCAA. So, we're switching over to that. And there was still at that time, a lot of dual departments. There was a female athletic department and our women's athletic department and men's athletic department. And and that's where you started to see some great role models like Joan Cronin, for years was, the women's athletic director at Tennessee. And I was fortunate, this is back to how role models have made a huge difference in my life. I ended up graduating from Furman, got my master's at University of South Carolina, and started a career in college coaching. And then somehow I ended up at Samford University, which had never had a women's basketball program. They asked me to come start one. And through being a coach at Samford, I got into administration and met Chris Voles, who was, longtime female athletic director at the University of Minnesota. And, she was a trailblazer in so many ways. And you talk about let's go get it done, had worked with the Women's Sports Foundation. I can't tell you the number of people that she has influenced and encouraged and helped open doors for. But, back in the 70s, those are just a few of the women that were really trailblazer opening doors, so that I can sit here today and say, yes, I'm a Division I female who is the athletic director over both men and women's sports. That was not going to happen back in the 76, early 80s. It just was not possible.
Yeah. And I want to talk about sort of like how rapidly things changed, but I'm wondering first, like in the 70s, was there pushback? Like, at any time, did you actively try to ask for something? Or do you remember times when people just weren't open to change?
Yeah, I think, there's some things I think about, and I hate to call them, they call them war stories, I guess, sort of like, 15 people packed in a 15-passenger van going to a basketball game or a field hockey, and perhaps the male team was riding on a chartered bus. I mean, it was pretty obvious that those things were different. And you know, in those late 70s, early 80s, I think there were many women who were in coaches and girls playing sports who started saying, wait a minute, something does not seem right. And so I do believe we were questioning, like, why not? Why can't we have the same amount of per diem on a trip? Or, you know, why can't we travel on a chartered bus? And, you know, I do believe, though, some of the early part is just knowing we were getting more opportunities to have more sports, you know, and that, you know, we saw some of those early things where we were adding some sports teams and giving, you know, but you were also a little bit afraid to ask for too much, because, you know, you would maybe be labeled as someone who is, you know, not going to, you know, if you criticize or you challenge, you might not get that next job to be a coach somewhere else. So there was a lot of that still. I perceived that, you know, some people were having that kind of conversation. They were afraid in some ways.
Yeah. And you see a lot of that, right? With especially with women, even today, working in male dominated industries, like constantly that line between like how much you push back and ask for and how much you play the game in order to get what you want, you know?
Yeah. And I don't say my career is probably somewhat different. And maybe I've just been fortunate to have so many people that have helped me in my career. And some have been women. Many of them were men, because the men were the ones in charge.
Right.
And I can go down, you know, everywhere, wherever I have been, even when at Mars Hill, which is Mars Hill University, my first coaching job there, Dr. Walker, great guy who really was trying to help grow women's sports at the time. And he was a little bit ahead of his time. So when I went there as my first head coaching job, he really was trying to do the right thing and help women. And then obviously, you know, probably my greatest mentor was Bob Roller at Samford University when I got hired to go there to start women's basketball. At the same time, they were starting women's soccer. And actually, when I got the phone call they called me and said, would you consider, I thought it was a joke. I'm going, are you kidding me? Everybody's got women's basketball. You might not have lacrosse or you might not have volleyball. And they're like, no, we don't. And I'm going, wow, do I want to go to a school that doesn't even have, you know, but they were being very proactive at that time after many years of not having things or not, you know, having the sports for women. They were really trying to catch up. And so I was excited to be at a place like Samford that was saying, okay, almost enough is enough. We're going to really start treating our men's and women's program equally. And it was a great experience. And Bob Roller was the one that kept saying to me, if you ever want to get out of coaching, you'd be a great administrator. And he was saying, and you could be an athletic. I'm like, there's no way a female is going to be an athletic director. At the time, you know, there was probably maybe 20 female athletic directors in Division I, maybe 25, but he's like, no, I'm going to help you. And that's how he encouraged me to find Chris Bowles, because he said, he said, I can teach you a lot, but I can't teach you what it's like to be the only female in a room of male athletic directors. I can't teach. So he was really a very encouraging and very, what I call pro helping women and women in athletics and the sports teams at Samford. So, you know, I always say kudos to Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places, is really trying to catch up for many, many years, you know, since Title IX. You know, this is now, you know, gosh, 20 years later, 15, 20 years later after Title IX, and they're really trying to be proactive. So, you know, I've been in that. Now, of course, as I've said before, you got to do the work to earn these opportunities, but to have different people who have said, yes, we're going to try to do this right. And now at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, where I am, you know, we're pretty much treating the men's and women's team equally. And, you know, and that's comes from maybe my background where, hey, as a little kid saying, well, girls can't do that. Well, now I'm the one in charge.
Right.
I'm like, we're going to treat everybody equally, you know, and, you know, we've added actually 2 women's sports here at UNC Asheville since I've gotten here. But everywhere that I've been touched by people who have been saying, yes, you can. Yes, we can figure this out, and let's find a way. And that's, I've been fortunate because not many women, and I'm sure you're probably interviewing some, can have that same story, you know, that they felt like there was a, you know, they talk about the glass ceiling, or you had to do 10 times as much to get recognized. And so I've had an opportunity because I've had men and women who have said, let's try to do the right thing and give women opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. We often talk about how, you know, it's some people say it's, if you can't see it, you can't be it, or you have like that representation matters, which it totally does.
Yeah.
But one of my friends said, no, well, if you can't see it, you can be it. It's just harder.
It is harder. It is harder. And, you know, one of the things too, you know, you go back to the 70s and the 80s, you know, when I was, got out of college, started, you know, working as a coach and learning. One of the things I learned early on though, too, was if you were a female in coaching, you also had to be the director of marketing. You had to be your own fundraiser.
Right.
So in reality, I tell people, like, I had some great training to help me get ready to be an athletic director, because as a coach, I was doing all those things. You know, my coaching staff and I, we were the marketing, the communications, we were the fundraiser, you know, budgeting. So it was almost like you're getting hands-on training. And who would have thought, you know, years later, that was going to be some of the best training to become an athletic director. The other part of this is, I think there are some advantages when you become, if you've been a coach or student athlete and haven't had some things that other teams have had or other opportunities, when you become an athletic director, you really understand when a coach walks into your office and tries to explain, well, this is why we need this. This is, you know, what we need to look at. You're a lot more understanding because you've sat in that same seat where you've gone, wow, how come we're going on vans and they're going on a charter bus? So you try to make that right for the next generation.
Wow. Yeah. And so in the early 70s, when the law first passed, what were some of the immediate changes that you noted?
Well, you know, obviously, I think some of the early changes where you saw all the way down to the high school level, people were adding some more sports because there was obviously a huge interest that probably, you know, people didn't realize how many more girls and women really wanted to play sports. And I meet women now who are in their 60s, like, you know, mid 60s, and said, man, I wish I could have been an athlete, but there were no opportunities. And so I think one of the early changes, you know, you started seeing some more teams added, you know, that to give those opportunities. And then the next thing that quickly I realized too, that because there were more teams being added, that more jobs were going to the men, because the men were saying the opportunities on the women's side, and they're going to keep adding teams, they're going to increase salaries. So I want to apply for that job. So in some ways, and you could, you know, look at the research on this, because it has increased through the years, and I'll say it again, it's not nearly where it's supposed to be, but it's getting better. I think we just saw the thing about soccer, which is really great achievement after all these years. But lots of men realized that the opportunities on the women's side were going to be pretty good opportunities. And, you know, they were going to be great job opportunities at major universities with, you know, a great salary. So we've seen in some ways that some of the opportunities that Title IX was supposed to create for women have gone to men.
Right.
And,
Were you coaching at that time? Because I have heard that before, that as the
Yeah.
salaries increased across the board for the coaches,
Yeah.
especially of women's team, men started to step into those
Yeah.
positions. How did you and your coaching colleagues feel about that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of reasons for that too, because remember, Title IX is not just for athletics. So, so some women, like I started out, I was going to be pre-med because I was going to now have an opportunity to go to med school, which a lot of women hadn't. So because there are more opportunities in medical school, law school, some women got those kind of opportunities, so they no longer felt like they were going to be because remember, and back then, people were usually teachers who were also asked to coach, and so lots of women decided, well, yes, teaching's a great career, but I could also now be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. So I think some of it is women who would have chosen a career in sports said, wow, I can also choose a different career. I don't,
Right.
that's not my only opportunity.
Mhm.
So I think the jobs are better. So more people apply for them, including men. And one of the things I've seen through the years too is, when you, because it's so competitive and we want to, if all possible, have women coach women. There are so many jobs out there that if 100 people apply, 30 of them probably are women and 70 are men, because the jobs are better now. And so, the men are applying for them. The bottom line is you got to hire the very best coach you can find, regardless of, you can't discriminate, obviously, but, I'd love to see some women. And I think with the better salaries that we're seeing and the professional opportunities, because now we have women, coaching in Major League Baseball. Who would have thought? That's one of those most recent things that you kind of go, wow. And we see sideline reporters. You're not just a sideline reporter for football. Now you're up there actually calling the game as a main person. So, you have more opportunities and different kinds of careers that women can go into. You don't have to just be a coach. You could be the marketing director at a major university, or you could be the sportscaster. And so I do believe we've created more opportunities, and that I'm happy for.
Yeah, for sure. And you at UNC, you put together a speaker series. Am I right? You mentioned
Yes.
it earlier.
Yeah,
and I know we
art-
talked about it before.
Yeah, Our Turn to Play, we started it, 18 years ago, 17 years ago when I got here. And actually our first ever speaker was Chris Voles, because she was a perfect example of someone who had been an athletic director over a women's athletic department in college, but also who was very sort of before her time in realizing the opportunities you need to have for women. So she was a great first speaker. And through the years, we've had Joan Cronin, we've had Leslie Visser, we've had a who's who come talk. And the whole purpose of the speaker series is we cannot forget what Title IX has done, but we also have to remember what we still need to do. And so, we now have a generation of student athletes who just think that, what they have today, that's how it's always been, but it hasn't been that way. And we also have a generation right now that realizes that it's still not completely fair. Our work is not done yet to make sure that everybody has the equal opportunity to play sports or, go to med school or engineering school, whether you're a male or a female. And I think that's been the best thing about Title IX, is to remember that we still have work to do, particularly when it comes to salaries. That's one area that's been a little more in public discussion recently, that, the differences between professional men's soccer and women's soccer, or the WNBA and the NBA. And I say kudos to all those groups, because you see they're making progress and people are really paying attention to it right now in 2022.
Yeah, the gender pay gap in pro sports is the thing that's it's mind blowing. You know, we talk about in other areas, it's often 80 cents on the dollar. That in pro sports, especially like the big five sports, it's in an insane gap.
Right.
How do we change that?
Well, before I answer that question, I think, because I want to always go back to what you were asking earlier, you know, when we first started with Title IX, we were almost just grateful we were getting opportunities. You know, you can pay me less. I'm just glad I got the opportunity. I think today is, yes, we're grateful that everybody has opportunities, but you know, if you're equally qualified, you need to make the same salary, you know, and if all things are equal, the salary should be the same. It should not be a difference because one person's a male and the other one is a female. I think that's what we got to really keep bringing attention to, that, you know, it's the same. It's the same workload. It's the same requirements. And so I think that's something we're going to have to keep in front of people and really make people understand. And I think we're seeing, you know, it's really been interesting, and you're probably seeing this too. What happened at the women's Final Four a couple of years ago that brought a lot of attention to there's some differences. And then immediately what started happening is a lot of the major corporations were like, wait a minute, I think the right thing, we're going to start uplifting and doing more for the women. And that's kind of continued now several years. And I really like that, because I'm like, let's get real. The women have a lot of buying power anyway. We're the ones out there buying the cars and doing, you know, there's a lot of value there. And I think we're kind of starting to see people really realize that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, sorry about the background noise. I think there's something going on outside. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because I think as time goes on too, it's sort of predicted that, I forget what it is. It's a shorter timeline than you expect, like 30 years, 50 years. That we're expecting like women to start to control more of the wealth. Mm-hmm. Right. And what we'll see happening then, I think, is what we're starting to see now, which is like women making decisions about, say, creating pro teams.
Right.
You know, like we're seeing in women's soccer, like women are like, hey, let's just spend our money and have a pro women's team. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. It's like super exciting.
Well, I agree with you. And, you know, one of the things too, you know, once again, if you look at all the research that many, if not all of the Fortune 500 companies that have women in leadership roles, their background, they played sports, you know. Yeah. And so, you know, let's not discount that those skills that we learn about teamwork, goal setting, are very important to success in careers. And you see those women having opportunities. They work their way up to the highest levels in these Fortune 500 companies. And you interview them, you look at their bios, and you'll see somewhere in there, oh, they played college tennis, or they're a former college basketball player. You know, so I think, you know, we don't want to discount too that these opportunities that we give girls and women to play sports also help in those other kind of careers when they decide, you know, you don't have to be a professional soccer player, but you're going to be professional in your, you know, finance, or professional in banking, or some of those other careers. And what you learned from your sports is going to help you there. So I think that's the other part that I love about what Title IX did, is you get to learn teamwork and those things because you had a chance to be on a team, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're totally speaking my language. I love this.
I hope this is what you.
Absolutely. This is exactly, you know, sometimes I'm asked to give presentations about women's sports, and this is exactly the point that I often land on, is that like, if we don't have those equal opportunities, it's not just about sport. It's about the fact that like our daughters will have more opportunities and will feel more confident. It's about mental health. It's about career choices. It's about everything. It's about thriving.
And I'm going to share, you know, we talked about our turn to play. So we recently had the first ever male speaker at our turn to play. It was Mike Wan. And we had originally invited him 2 years ago when COVID happened. because he was the executive director of the LPGA. And the reason we invited him, because he was doing some cutting edge things in the LPGA to really promote women and to get the dollars the same and all this kind of stuff. Well, COVID kind of stopped that. So he came to speak to the Our Turn to Play. And the message he gave was really something I had never thought about. He said that he, as a youth growing up, he never worried about him having a chance to play baseball or soccer or golf. If you're a male, you never think about that. As he got to be an adult, he never thought about his son having a chance to play. And, you know, because it was just a given. If you're a male, if you want to play sports, you can. He said what he realized through working with the LPGA and all this, that and he really said this to all of us. If you have a daughter, guess what? You should be worrying whether or not they will have an opportunity. But if you have a son, you never have to worry about that. And so, you know, Title IX was meant so that we didn't have to worry about our daughters or our niece or our granddaughter playing a sport. And so if Title IX is going to be successful, we should never worry about if someone wants to play a sport and if they're a little girl or a woman, they should be able to do that. But, you know, coming up back in the 70s, you know, it was sort of like, got to worry. They might do away with the girls' basketball team, or we might not have one at our school. But that was not true for the little boys or the boys in high school that played, because it was a given. You were going to have sports for the boys. So I hope in this 2022 that we're at the point where if there's a little girl out there who wants to play sport, there's an opportunity, and we don't have to worry about her having that opportunity.
I absolutely love that. I think, well, I was going to stop there, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
What would you tell a young woman who wants to follow your career path? What advice would you give her?
Wow, I get asked that question a lot because I got one of our former student athletes who's getting her master's, who wants to be an athletic director, and she's going to interview me later this week. And that's her question, really. What advice can you give me? And I think the first advice I would give is, I hope you're very passionate about what it is you're doing, because every day, and I've been doing this a long time, but I still love what I do. And so you need to really know that you're passionate about athletics and about the value it can bring, particularly if you're in higher ed, because I do believe there's still lots of value that, you know, we bring to our university. So have that passion. Also, always know what is your real purpose. And if your purpose is about yourself, you're probably going to struggle in athletics, because the purpose, at least for me, is how can I help student athletes and coaches achieve their dreams, whether that's on a playing field or golf course, or whether that's in the classroom, or whether that is helping them get to their careers, you know, is very, very important. And so I think, you know, you have to have your purpose and you have to have your passion are very, very important before you even think about all the skills and the things that you need to learn how to do to be an athletic director. And so, you know, I would really encourage, you know, if you can convince me that you're passionate and you know what your real purpose is, then we'll work on the other things, the skill sets and the relationships you need and the connections and how to get you on a career path. You know, what are those first steps? I mean, that's a little bit of advice I'd give to somebody. And then the advice or the wish that I would give them, if I could grant them one wish, I'd say, I hope you have as much fun and meaning in your career as I've had in mine being in athletics, because it's been very rewarding. And it's been tough, it's been challenging at times, and some days you scratch your head and say, what in the world is happening? But I just think we still have an opportunity to make a difference in young people's lives through sports, and particularly through college athletics. And I see it every day. I saw 62 of them in early May walk across the stage and get their degrees, and I said to myself, you know, we made a difference because those are
Mm.
62 athletes that got a college degree
Mhm.
and who are going out there, and I think they're going to help change the world. And I think that because they were an athlete, that they probably have a little bit of an advantage over some others.
Yeah, I completely agree. So purpose and passion, I love that you separated those two out, because they are kind of two different things. And
Yeah.
then find a mentor. That's something else
Oh
I'm really
gosh, you
taking
got to
from
have
this
a mentor.
conversation. Mhm.
And I think you'll have different mentors depending on sort of what stage you are in your life and for what you're trying to do. And you can't be afraid. And I talk to other groups about this and they don't believe me. And then the ones that do believe me realize it's a real gift you can give to someone. You cannot be afraid to reach out to someone who you aspire to be like or feel like you can learn something from. And I think some people hold back and they go, yeah, when Janet, like I tell them, I say, hey, email me, jcone@uncasheville.edu. My cell number is 828-606-1014. Call me if I can help you. And they're like, does she really mean that? And I'm going, I really do. And recently I had someone at a university who's a female that wants to be an athletic director. And she heard me say that on one of these little Zoom interviews. And she sent me an email and I picked up the phone and called her. And I've been mentoring her this entire year. And she probably never expected that I really meant that, but people will help you. And one of the things I did early on, and I said, this is old fashioned now, but I bet it'll still work. At the beginning of every summer, I would write 5 short note cards to 5 people that I wanted to learn something from. And say, hey, I saw you just had a new book out. I found that fascinating. Would you share with me whatever? Or can I call you for 15 minutes? I did that for years. And I learned, I can't tell you the number of free books I got, 30-minute conversations, friends I met. So I think that's another way is, look at an area that you're in, whether it's marketing, whether it's being an athletic director or, a TV personality, sports personality. I guarantee if you write 5 people, at least 4 of them will respond to you.
That's
and
incredible.
Help you. Yeah. And I tell, and they don't believe, I said, right now, if you actually write a real note card, since people like to email and text, first of all, they'll be shocked that you actually wrote something in a real mail, sending it.
Yeah, you'll stand out.
Yeah. And so, I think that's another thing. If you want to help, kind of find a way to get people to help you, reach out to them. I mean, most people that are at least in athletics, are really very giving. They want to give back because they realize somebody's helped them. And I can't tell you the number of times I've emailed someone I've met and said, hey, I just did this with Peter Roby, who I just think the world of. He was on the men's basketball selection committee when a group of us, and we've gotten to be friends. And I said, Peter, I'm mentoring 2 up and coming athletic administrators, and they've been listening to me for a year. Will you get on a Zoom with them? And he's on the night commission and talk about what you think the future of athletics. And Peter, he said, sure, let's set it up. And so 2 of the people I've been mentoring got mentored by Peter Roby by us just saying, hey, will you give us 30 minutes? And so, I think particularly women need to be brave enough to do that, to be courageous enough to say, hey, I'm going to reach out to somebody. Hey, if you don't hear back from them, so big deal. But I bet you'll hear back from some people that would generously donate some of their time to help you in your career.
I've found that to be true as well. Although I have not done 5 per year. That's amazing. I feel like this is a great place to leave because I think, sometimes we get bogged down in like the opportunities we don't have, or we see, or we get pushback, negative comments on social media, whatever it is. And so like what you said just there, most people want to help. And that's been my experience as well, is that people actually do want to help. They just don't know how to change the system or how to help. So if you ask them something specific and they can mentor you and you can, go out and change things, that's just wonderful.
Right. I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot more good in the world than we think there is right now.
Mhm.
And it's because there are still good people,
Yeah.
that really are trying to do. This is my favorite thing to say right now, and I've probably stole it from somebody, so we'll have to give credit to somebody. I can't remember it. It's more important to get it right than to be right. And I think, there's many, many people that think like that now, that it's not all about doom and gloom, that, together we can figure things out, what's the right thing to do. And whether that has to do with Title IX and giving women opportunities, or I think we also need to remember there are some male sports that probably are not getting the right opportunity right now either, just in the world we're living in. So it's more about, let's try to do the right thing and admit, I'll be the first to admit, we don't always get it right, but you can say, hey, I screwed up. Sorry, let's try to do it better next time. And I do believe, I believe dearly in college athletics as part of higher education. I think we got a lot of work to do coming up here over the next couple of years to make sure that other people following us have those same opportunities.
Yeah. And, I believe in college athletics too. And I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done for women in sport and for college athletics. So thank you so much, Janet. And thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for what you're doing to try to keep the word out there and keep people, paying attention to this very important topic.
Whether you run, ride, hike, or swim, you understand what it means to push harder, reach farther, and go the extra mile. This relentless drive runs in your blood. That's why Inside Tracker provides you with a personalized plan to build endurance, boost energy, and optimize your health for the long haul. Created by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics, Inside Tracker analyzes your blood, DNA, and fitness tracking data to identify where you're optimized and where you're not. You'll get a daily action plan with personalized guidance on the right exercise, nutrition, and supplementation for your body. And when you connect Inside Tracker to your Fitbit or Garmin, you'll also unlock real-time recovery pro tips after you complete your workout. It's like having your own personal trainer and nutritionist in your pocket. For a limited time, you can get 20% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Just go to insidetracker.com/Feisty. That's insidetracker.com/Feisty.
Feisty Media's Title IX series is proudly partnered with Vela Rosa. Vela Rosa is a women-owned and operated cycling apparel company that creates mix and match cycling wear to make women feel comfortable, confident, and beautiful. Created by two avid women cyclists, they know the importance of high-performance biking shorts and jerseys that fit a woman's body. It doesn't work to shrink and pink men's gear and expect it to work for women. Vela Rosa believes cycling wear should be fun, comfortable, and visible. You want to be bright and to be bold and be seen. Vela Rosa's collections are designed to mix and match with coordinating kit pieces that allow women to get more mileage out of their cycling wardrobes. New for 2022, a completely redesigned cycling tank, reflective safety tabs on all of their tops, and more long sleeve options for those chilly morning rides. You'll find tons of great reviews on their site from women who love Vela Rosa gear. Their 5-star rated shorts prove that when women try them, they love the fit. Particularly the yoga waistband, power leg bands, and the super soft, all black, what stains, chamois. Whether you like to ride pavement, gravel, dirt, or your local trail system, cycling is about the community. Join the sisterhood of cyclists that is Vela Rosa today. Enter Feisty15, that's all caps, FEISTY, number 15, at checkout, and receive 15% off of order of full-priced cycling wear at velarosacycling.com today. Active women need more protein. And if you're training hard, you need a lot more, like upwards of 100 grams a day or even more. That can be a challenge to get through meals alone some days, so a good protein powder like Neurify Plus from Previnex can help. Neurify Plus is a vegan-friendly protein powder that is low in sugar, high in essential branched chain amino acids, and contains probiotics and digestive enzymes, so it's easy to digest and doesn't cause the gassy feeling you can get with other protein powders. Neurify Plus is laboratory tested and contains no soy, gluten, dairy, preservatives, or artificial sweeteners. Listeners of this series can get 15% off their first time purchase by using the code TITLE9, that's all caps and the number 9 at checkout. Just go to Previnex.com, Prebinex.com, and use the code TITLE9 at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. If you don't like it, the company offers a 100% money-back guarantee on all of their products within 30 days, no questions asked. Again, use the code TITLE9 at checkout for 15% off your first-time purchase at Previnex.com.
So Celine, one thing I really liked about that interview, and something that we've seen, as we've been going through this series, is that, one of the main messages is this is the fight we've been fighting, and we need to keep going. And some of the ways, and I love it when the guests kind of name the ways, right? The things to do, because I think they have a lot of our guests, in particular Janet, has great insight into what needs to happen. And one of the things she identified was around the gender gap in coaching, and that really struck me, because I thought, oh wow, there's a gender pay gap in coaching. I just hadn't thought about it. Right?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And she, as you mentioned, she's an excellent person to point that out, because she's been in it so long. She has seen where the gaps have filled and where the gaps are not. So there's still gaps.
Yeah, exactly. And so next week we have a very cool interview. Celine, why don't you tell us a bit about it?
I'm so stoked I found her. This is next week. We have an interview with MMA fighter Amanda Levy, and I really love that guest. And one of the reasons that I loved her so much is that she's another generation. She's 25, and she was kind of aware of Title IX, even though it happened so long ago, and was not able to use it to her advantage. So even now, so it's really interesting to talk to her, and really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, me too. I listened yesterday as well, so I'm super stoked about that next week.
9 Voices for Title IX, powered by Inside Tracker, is a Feisty media production.
This episode was produced and edited by the amazing Amelia Perry.